Linda is the one for me, please. Break up with me. James said this with a serious expression. I couldn't respond right away. I wanted to say, let's start over. Don't leave me. That's how much I love James. I understand. Those were the only words I could manage to say. And then we got divorced. Since then, I've been living with my son, just the two of us. What? Why now? Then I received a letter from James, who had chosen his mistress. He passed away in a car accident a month ago. Despite this, I received a letter from him, and, puzzled, I read it. If something happens to me, the contents of the letter were shocking to me. No way, this can't be true. After reading to the end, I started trembling. And then I made a decision. I am Mary McCoy, a 32-year-old working mom. I have a husband, James, 1 year older than me, and our son, David. Mary, you're a great cook. What? I mean, the way you subtly serve food, arrange the dishes, and call the waiter at just the right moment. I met James at a party I was dragged to by a friend. I've always been bad at asserting myself and usually just listen. Even at the party, while everyone was having fun, I was supporting them when James spoke to me. Are you bored? Not at all, but I'm not good at talking. I see. Oh, have you tried this dish? It's delicious. James always had a smile and was considerate of me. Thanks to him, I managed to enjoy the party. Would you like to exchange our numbers? And so we exchanged our numbers. We quickly became close, and he confessed his feelings to me. After a few years of dating, we got married. This name is really cute. How about David for our son? I love that. Nice to meet you, David. Shortly after we got married, I gave birth to David. James chose his name. I'm so glad I married you, Mary. Thanks to you, I'm happy. James said this with a smile. Nodding back with a smile, I said, I'm happy too, thanks to you, James. I thought this happiness would last forever. I truly believed that. Mom, I finished my homework. Oh, already? That's great. David, who resembles the brilliant James, is very smart. He's diligent and does his homework without being told, often asking James to help him study. We're proud of our son. However, there's someone who doesn't think well of David. That's my mill, Patricia. David doesn't look much like James. Whose child is he? Patricia doesn't like that David resembles me. Every time we meet, she sneers and says this to David. What are you talking about? That's right, David is definitely my son. If you keep talking like this, I won't come to this house anymore. Of course, neither James nor I tolerated Patricia's words. Patricia cares about James, so when he said, I won't come to the house again, she apologized. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. But she kept saying it every time we visited, so she probably didn't mean her apology. And then there was Robert. A boy shouldn't be so weak. It's annoying. Robert didn't like that David preferred studying indoors to playing outside. With tablets becoming a study tool recently, Robert tried to forcibly take it away, saying, You keep fiddling with that thing indoors, you'll become an idiot. Things are different now. David studies with it. You can't study with a piece of junk like that. This is like the smartphone you use. Besides, when I was a kid, you told me to study inside all the time. Why tell David to play outside? Robert used to keep James inside, making him study. Of course, using a tablet inside all the time isn't good. But David often plays outside with friends. However, there are no kids around the in-laws' house, no friends to play with, and no yard, so David prioritizes studying. I'm really sorry. My parents don't like that I married you, Mary. Apparently, Robert and Patricia wanted James to marry another woman. That woman was James's childhood friend, the daughter of a well-known local company president. That girl has loved him since childhood, and he marries a woman like this. Enough. I love Mary and David with all my heart. Don't disappoint me anymore. Because of his parents, we became more distant and rarely visit their house now. But occasionally they visit us unannounced or show up at David's school. If my parents come, just ignore them. I work from home, so I'm usually inside. Knowing this, the in-laws bang on the door or shout loudly when I ignore them, causing a lot of stress. Once, a neighbor called the police because of their behavior, so they left quickly. I continue to ignore them, wondering why they are so persistent. For safety, I accompany David to and from school, wary of his grandparents. My parents are also concerned, so nothing serious has happened so far. But it's natural to be worried. Should we move closer to your parents, Mary? This prompted us to consider moving. The expense is a burden, but for peace of mind, we began searching for a new home. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. Could it be work-related? At first, I was cautious, but after several calls, I decided to answer. Hello. Finally, you answered. You're so slow, you fool. A woman's voice insulted me right away. I frowned, unsure if I should hang up. Who is this? If you have no business, I'll hang up. How rude. I'm Linda Katzel, James's future wife. What is she talking about? I considered hanging up again. If this is a prank, I'll hang up. I'm serious. I'm James's childhood friend and his future wife. I remembered James mentioning a childhood friend named Linda. Linda is selfish and not my type. He had said that before. Could this Linda be that childhood friend? If so, why is she calling me? I stayed silent, pondering this. Can you hear me? Yes, I hear you. What about this childhood friend? It's obvious. James belongs to me. Just break up with him already. Even over the phone, I could sense her disdain. How much does this woman look down on me? Sorry, but I refuse. James and I love each other. That's just for now. He just wanted to have fun before marrying me. Don't get ahead of yourself. I understand why James can't stand her. You can't really have a conversation with this woman. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm working. Goodbye. I said this and hung up. After that, she called several times, but I ignored them. Eventually, the calls stopped. But then I received a message. How long do you think you can keep working against the mighty Katzel Group? Katzel Group. I had a bad feeling. Could it be that Katzel? Katzel Group is a large company running multiple restaurants. The president's last name is Katzel, so Linda might be telling the truth. Of all companies, it had to be Katzel Group. I also have business dealings with Katzel Group. Moreover, they are one of James's clients. I need to discuss this with James right away. As soon as James came home from work, I told him about Linda's call. James's eyes widened in shock. No way, Linda. James, are you okay? Seeing James visibly upset, I asked, concerned. After a moment, he shook his head. I'm fine. I'll handle her. James smiled reassuringly. Despite a bad feeling, I decided to trust him as usual. All right, please take care of it. James smiled as if relieved. Whenever there was a problem, James would say, "Leave it to me," and solve it. So I trusted him this time too, but later I would regret it. Is Dad coming home late again today? It seems so. From the next day, James started coming home late. He said it was because of the busy season, but the timing made me suspect it had something to do with Linda. But James didn't tell me anything, so I could only wait, worried. I hope he comes home early. Me too. Nodding at David's words, I wished for our life to return to normal. Things changed a year later. What are you saying? Linda is pregnant with my child, so please divorce me. James said this without any expression. I couldn't believe his words and just stared at him. My decision is final. I'll give you custody and the house. Don't be ridiculous. The house we currently live in is the new one we had considered before. After almost a year of thinking, we finally decided on our dream home. How could he easily give up this house and our beloved son? The James I knew would never do that. Think again. Tell me the truth. I confronted James, but he neither answered nor looked me in the eye. I won't sign the divorce papers until you tell me the truth. Fine, then I'll go back to my parents' house. After that, James didn't return to our new home and started living with his parents. His parents were overjoyed. They called daily saying, "Get a divorce now, free James." But I held on, wanting to know the truth. Mary, give up on him. But my parents' support for the divorce changed everything. They had always supported me and believed in James. Suddenly, they changed their minds. Why even you, Dad? I can't accept this. Please, Mary, we don't want you to be unhappy. Convinced by my parents, I chose to divorce James. I'm sorry, David. We can't live with Dad anymore. I see. David said this sadly. Fortunately, my earnings were enough for us to live comfortably. And my parents would surely help too. I'll be fine, Mom. Just the two of us. Hugging my smiling son. I realized I had to be strong for him. Before the divorce, I want to talk one last time. Okay, I'll come home once. I decided to meet James one last time. You look a bit worn out. Yeah, been busy. Seeing James again, he looked exhausted, sighing repeatedly. As I said before, you can have custody and the house. You can easily give up on David. James looked conflicted for a moment at my words. But he quickly returned to his blank expression. I still have another child. With Linda. James looked away. The James I knew never avoided eye contact during serious conversations. Is the James I loved gone? I see. You don't need us anymore. That's right. Finally, James looked at me. Linda is the only one for me, please. Break up with me. James said this with a serious expression. I couldn't respond right away. I wanted to say, let's start over, and don't leave me. That's how much I loved James. I understand. Those were the only words I could manage. And so we divorced. Mom, don't worry, I'll protect you in Dad's place. Thank you, David. David comforted me as I was feeling down. I realized that I don't need James anymore. As long as I have David, I'm fine. I'll be okay too. I'll make sure you're happy, David. Saying this, I hugged David. And I decided to move on without James. Since then, I've been living with my son, just the two of us. What? Why now? Then I received a letter from James, who had chosen his mistress. He passed away in a car accident a month ago. About James, he was hit and run over and passed away immediately. That's what my father told me. When I heard that, I was very sad. I decided to divorce him, but I guess part of me still loved him. But he chose his childhood friend, aka mistress, over me. So I didn't attend his funeral. Why a letter from James? Despite this, I received a letter from him and read it with suspicion. I truly regret what I did to you and David. I'm really sorry. The letter started with an apology. The neatly written words made me nostalgic, and I almost cried. As I read further, I exclaimed, "What? If something happens to me..." The contents were shocking. This can't be true. After reading to the end, I trembled. And I made a decision. I understand your feelings, but that's separate from this. Muttering this, I decided to take action. Filled with determination to never forgive and never lose, I moved forward. I'm Mary Mahima, James's wife. I need to see the president. First, I went to the Catzel Group headquarters. I asked the receptionist to call the president. You must be Mary. My condolences about James. Thank you, but more importantly, I received this recently. I handed the letter from James to John. He took it, read it, and nodded. Everything written here is true. So, James. Yes, he never betrayed you and David. Hearing these words clearly, I felt tears well up. Seeing this, John stood up. I'm truly sorry for what happened. And he apologized deeply. How could such a sincere man have raised a woman like that? I thought as I looked at John. No matter how much you apologize, James won't come back. If only you had recognized it sooner. I must apologize for that too. We haven't gathered all the evidence yet. But John then revealed something shocking. Hearing it, part of me felt vindicated. I understand. I'm not blaming you, but please cooperate with me. Bring me that evidence. Of course, I'll gather the evidence. Making a firm promise with John, I prepared for what lay ahead. I would clear James's name, for the sake of David and our happiness. Watch Linda and you too, worthless parents. 3 days after meeting John, I had gathered enough evidence and went to the former in-law's house. I'm right here with you. Yes, thank you. Leaving David with my mother at my parents' house, I rang the doorbell at the in-law's house with my father. Yes, wait, who are you? A blonde woman with heavy makeup appeared from the in-law's house. This must be Linda. This is the woman who took James away from me. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary Mahima, and this is my father. What? You're that Mary? Linda looked me and my father up and down. What do you want? This house is mine now. I have something important to discuss, and by the way, being kicked out of the mansion. And living in this humble house must be miserable. I smiled as I said this, and she quickly turned red with anger. President Catzel had kicked her out and disowned her after learning about James. So, she was forced to live in this ordinary and inconvenient house. Don't get cocky, you were dumped, remember? We have a lot to discuss, including that. Can we come in? My father said calmly, and she reluctantly let us in. Oh, the loser is here. What do you want now? My former in-laws were there too, looking at me suspiciously. I smiled at them. I'm here to talk about James. It's time to strike back. They'll regret their actions. Recently, I received a letter from James. What? A letter from James. I showed them the letter I had shown to President Cherokee. Their initial scowls turned to shock as they read. You didn't expect a letter revealing the truth from your son after his death, did you? The letter detailed their misdeeds. You pressured James in every way possible to marry that woman. Knowing that Linda still liked James, they thought they could benefit from marrying him into the Cherokee family. They pressured him to marry her. The letter says, every day my parents called, pressuring me to marry Linda. It disrupted my work and isolated me. Day and night, they called, even contacting his workplace if he didn't answer. James was constantly on edge because of them. Yet James always refused, saying, I only love Mary. When you saw he wouldn't comply, you resorted to extreme measures. My father glared at them as he spoke. James had confided in him before, and my parents supported me, knowing James's intentions. That's why, knowing the whole truth now, he came with me to confront them. You said, I've given up. Let's have a drink as father and son, and called James to your house. James had been cautious but decided to give them one last chance before cutting ties. There, his parents made James drink a lot of alcohol and got him drunk. You got him drunk and then brought that woman to the house, creating a false scenario. James had no memory of being unfaithful, but the situation made him feel trapped. Deciding to protect us, he initiated the divorce. What you didn't expect was President Cherokee disowning Linda after learning the truth. Kicked out, Linda squatted in this house. She hoped to live off James's earnings, but he died in the accident. Driving your own son to the brink for your own gain. How could you? You're not parents. You should be ashamed. My father's shout made them flinch and look down. So what? James chose me in the end. Because you lied about being pregnant. I looked at her belly, which showed no signs of pregnancy. I doubted she was ever pregnant. You went to extreme lengths to get James. She'd used her status as a company president's daughter to pressure James's company. He was under the scrutiny of a major company. James faced even more cold stares from his co-workers. You waited for him outside his office every day. Linda had stalked him daily, making James take detours and work late to avoid her. I was just expressing my feelings to James. Your feelings? Did you just want a man who wouldn't fall for you? Linda flinched at my words. James realized how Linda felt about him. James had written about her obsession in the letter. She thinks every man is hers. She's obsessed with me because I rejected her. There's no love. That's what he wrote. That's not true. I love James. Really? Then why these? As I said this to Linda, I showed her several photos. In those photos, Linda was seen getting cozy with different men. That's James told you, I don't love you, and you might not even be carrying my child. It's James's fault. He ignored me. So you orchestrated the car accident. President Cherokee's cold voice cut through the air. What? Why do I hear Dad's voice? Linda looked around in confusion. Then she noticed the phone in my hand. I asked Mary to let me join the call since she told me she was confronting you today. Dad, why did you kick me out? It's only natural to disown a daughter who ruins lives and commits crimes. His voice was icy. Not something you'd expect from a father speaking to his daughter. James had been consulting with me for a while. He planned to bring me evidence of Linda's infidelity and the setup against him. On his way, he had the accident. He got what he deserved for betraying me. It was your fault. You pushed him into the street while he was waiting at the crosswalk. James, caught off guard, didn't notice Linda and ended up stepping into the road where he was hit by a car. It was a hit and run that took his life. He was such a good person, but your selfishness cost him his life. How do you know all this, Dad? I was on the phone with James at that time. James had called John to say he was on his way. John heard the accident and James's shocked exclamation, "Linda," over the phone. I've been gathering evidence of your crimes as your last act of reparation. Even you, Dad, you're betraying me. You lost my trust first. With that, he hung up. Linda kept calling for her father, but the phone was silent. President John has already given the evidence to the police. It's only a matter of time before you're arrested. No way. Linda collapsed to her knees. As she did, the sound of police sirens filled the air. Linda was arrested and taken away. It's fine. I still have James's inheritance. That will be enough. Sorry to disappoint you, but you won't get any of James's inheritance. Linda was muttering to herself before the arrest. I smiled as I spoke to her. What? But I was James's. I am still James's wife. We never filed the divorce papers. James had filled out the divorce papers but never submitted them. I know I should let Mary go, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The divorce papers came with his letter. So, James and I were still legally married. David and I will receive his inheritance. Not a penny will go to you or your toxic parents." Linda started to scream incoherently. Just as she tried to lunge at me, the police arrived and took her away. "Hey Mary, we were threatened by her too." Yes, she manipulated us into helping her. Seeing Linda taken away, my former in-laws tried to cozy up to me. I glared at them. "Because of you, I lost my beloved husband, and David lost his father. You betrayed James, who wanted to care for you till the end. But David is our grandson, James's only legacy." I gave Robert a cold look as he raised his voice. "He's the only one carrying James's blood. Give us David." "Yes, he's our grandson." I knew their intentions. They wanted to take David and claim James's inheritance to support them in their old age. "I would never give my precious son to you." "Exactly. A child is not a tool for your convenience." My father shouted back at them, and we left the house. Later, I heard through the grapevine that our confrontation had made the neighbors suspicious of my in-laws. They were already known as a troublesome couple, and now they were constantly gossiped about. They got what they deserved for what they did to their son. "Mom, did you say something?" "Oh, nothing. Just thinking about dinner tonight." I decided to live for David from now on, ignoring those awful people. As I patted David's head, I resolved to move forward. After her release, Linda reportedly turned to her parents' house for help. But they didn't take her in. She argued at the door and left in disgrace. Linda was kicked out of both her in-laws and her own home and disappeared into the night. With her looks, she'll manage to earn my alimony somehow. It turns out she wasn't pregnant either. At least there's no child to suffer. My former in-laws sold their house and moved away after more trouble. My father hired a detective and found out they caused issues in their new location and were marked by troublesome people. They won't find happiness anytime soon. Good riddance. Knowing the villains met their just ends, I felt relieved. Years later, "I'm off to school, Mom." "Take care, don't be late." "I know." I smiled and waved as David headed off to school. He's grown up and is now a high school student. David still loves studying and has grown into a kind boy who always looks out for me. "Dad told me to protect you if anything happened." He shared this with me when he started middle school. Before James and I separated, he had a long talk with David. There, he was told to protect me if anything happened to him. "So I decided to protect you for Dad too." Smiling at David, I remembered James's letter. "If I can never return to you and David, live happily without seeking revenge." James cared about us until the end. I didn't fulfill his wish to avoid revenge, but I have no regrets. I feel at peace. My parents still support us, and John helps us financially out of guilt. I'm learning business from John. Oh, really? My dream is to take over his company someday. David spoke of his future with a smile. I plan to support him warmly. Please keep watching over us. I spoke to the photo of James in our living room. I felt his gentle smile agreeing with me